Okay, what this video is going to show you is how to create a repeating TileMap. And that's a TileMap where we specify a small graphic, but we get the engine to repeat it on the screen. Okay, so our graphic might only take up like 1/10 of the screen, and then the engine will repeat it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a graphic. So I've got a graphic that I've added to my sample texture. This one here, just a bit of text with a nice coloured fill. Now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to know where the rectangle for that is and how big it is, because I want to make my TileMap the same size as this graphic. So what I've done in Fireworks, I've created a rectangle using the shape tool. Okay, now that rectangle is the information, the X, the Y, the width and the height information that I need for my specifications in my engine. Now because it's solid, I can't really see very well the extent of it. I mean, it does help with that little guide thing there, but what you can do is you can use the transparency tool so that I can see that I've roughly got my text in the middle. Okay, and it's going to be these numbers that are important, the X, Y, width and height. So we'll come back to those. So let's just minimize that out of the way. Okay, in order to do a TileMap, we need to create storage for it. So in our graphics file, I'm going to create another TileMap, and I'm going to call this overlay. Okay, can't think of any better name for it. And in startup, I've got, if I go right to the top of startup, I've got my create TileMap subroutine. So if I right click on that from setup tasks and say go to definition, you can see this is where I've got my background already created for that's my Mars background. So I'm going to add another one. So create overlay. Okay, it should red squiggle to say they don't exist. So I'm going to right click on that and say generate method stub, and it'll create that for me. Okay, so the first thing I need to do, I need to create my TileMap. So tm overlay, and you say equals new TileMap, give it a name, overlay, and then I need to say what size it is. Now I want it to be the same size as that graphic in Fireworks. So if I go back to Fireworks, these numbers that I need, 497, 105 are the positions, but it's the width and the height that I want. So it wants to be 220 wide, so we say 220, and it was 180 high. Okay, now what I also need to do is I need to set how big I want each individual tile to be made. Now this number has to go into both 220 and 180, and 20 will go into that. So we're going to make it new point 2020. That's important, okay, to make the game engine work properly. So that sets up the size of my TileMap. Now I need to say what the graphic is, so I need to put that graphic on the TileMap. So I do that by saying TileMap manager, tile portion, so just the same as the other one. You want to know what TileMap I'm doing it for, so it's the graphics overlay. Right, the portion we want, so we need to specify a new rectangle. Now we need to know the X and Y position. Now we've got that here. Okay, so where this white rectangle I had on my graphic, it says X 497, Y 105. So if I go back, 497, 105, and the width was 220 and the height was 180. Right, this is getting a bit long, so I'm just going to break it across a few lines, because that's what you can do. Right, so the next thing after the rectangle is to put a position. So I'm going to say new vector 3. I just want it to be at the start. I'm going to say not, and the texture I'm getting it from is from my sample texture. Okay. Final thing I have to do is to tell it what type of TileMap is. So TM, oh, spelling it wrong. TM overlay type equals, and I'm going to make it a front. I'll show you what the difference is with switching it around in a minute. So it's a front, so it's going to appear in front of all the sprites. Okay, so that creates it. So we've made the space, we've got an appropriate graphic, we've in create TileMap's created another subroutine to create this one, this new one, and we've given it a type. Okay, that was the key thing, making the point size for the TileMap go into both of those. If you was to make a TileMap that was 200 by 200, then it wouldn't be such a problem. Okay, but this, I'm just showing you a weird one, because you will come across problems if you don't. So the last thing we need to do is show it. So in our start title, and obviously you can put this wherever you want. Remember, you're tailoring this. This isn't telling you how to build the game. This is showing you how to do bits. So I want to add this to the TileMap manager. Graphics door. Okay, so that should, remember, this is the code. Doing that makes it display. Adding it to the TileMap manager. Okay, so but it's only displayed it once because that's how big the TileMap is. So you can see it's there. Now, what we can do is we can go back to our code in startup and tell the TileMap that what we want it to do is wrap. So if we say wrap equals true, oops, and then run it again, you should see the effect. So that this will force it to repeat. So there you go, it's repeated it. Now that might be how you want it. I'll just show you me pushing it into the background. So if we change the type of it to back, run it again, so it should be behind the sprites when we run. There you go, it's behind the sprites, but it's in front of the planet. Now in order to, I want it to go behind the planet, so if I go back to title mode and I just alter the order I put these into the TileMap manager, so I'll put the overlay first and the Mars background, and you'll see that the Mars background's in front of it now. Okay, it's still repeating it, you just can't see it for the planet. Right, so let me just go back to my code. I'm going to make it go in the front again. Just make sure that's working. Okay, right, I'm going to put a bit of scrolling effect on this now, so I'm going to say graphics.tm overlay dot scroll x, and I'm going to scroll it at 50 pixels a second, and in the x direction, and tm overlay dot scroll y equals, well, let's just do 50 again. Let's see what the effect of that is. Okay, so I'll just run, and you should see straight away what the effect of that is. Remember, it jerks a little bit because of the silly recording software. Right, I can put positive and negative, so I want the Y to go the opposite direction. So I'll just go back, change it to -50 for the Y, and get it scrolling like that. Okay, so the game engine's doing that automatically for you. Okay.